Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today with our friend Grace Ji-Sun Kim. Grace received her PhD from the University of Toronto and is professor of theology at Earlham School of Religion. She's the author or editor of over 20 books, including Surviving God, Spirit Life, and Invisible. Her new book, When God Became White, Dismantling Whiteness for a More Just Christianity, releases on May 7th. Grace is the host of Madang podcast, which holds conversations on Christianity, religion, and culture, hosted by Christian Century Magazine. Grace was included in the Englewood Review of Books list of 10 important women theologians that you should be reading. And Erdman's included her in 5 great women scholars and their books. She's also one of the top 10 writers shaping our movement, put together by Center of Progressive Renewal. And Grace has spoken at our writers' conferences and at the Wild Goose Festival, as well as many other venues. She's an ordained minister within the PCUSA. And you can learn lots more about Grace at gracejisunkim.wordpress.com. So Grace, great to see you again. Congratulations on all of your amazing work, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian, for having me back. It's a joy always to speak with you. So thank you for having me back to talk about my newest
No, it's my pleasure.
topic.
We've done several of these book launch interviews, and I really have a lot of respect for your work, and I'm glad to see it continuing relatively fervently as we discussed this spring. Since 2
It's
books.
been a very busy spring.
So what else would you like people to know about you than what I just kind of briefly touched on there?
Oh, you said too much about me, so thank you so much for making me sound so wonderful.
Well, you are. So you've written all kinds of great books, and you're a voice that I feel needs to be heard more from. So I'm glad that you're continuing to be prolific in your writing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So there's kind of 2 things we'd like to discuss today. First is obviously the book. As I mentioned, the title is When God Became White, Dismantling Whiteness for a More Just Christianity. So how did that book come about?
Um, it was a sudden thought that I had. The other ones, I'm mulling over it for years. I think this is the quickest book I wrote. I think I
Wow.
wrote it in like 8 months, just the writing part. And then,
Mhm.
the publisher takes so long. So, because other books, they take me years because I'm just kind of going through it. But this one was fast because I'm always dealing with so many problems around me, the context that I'm living in. So understanding, trying to make sense of the racism was what pushed me to write this one. And then
Mhm.
I thought, okay, I just stumbled on this topic and I thought I got to write it fast. And it just came out really fast out of me. Other books take a long time, but this one came out really fast. But most of my books, I'm dealing with something that is happening in the world or in my life that I have to try to make sense of. And so the best way for me to make sense is to start writing, doing some research, reflecting, and then writing some more. So that's how this book came about.
Well, it seems to me that it's pretty timely. I mean, and probably more reception to this than what there had been, a few years ago.
Oh yeah, I think maybe, people always say timing is everything or location is everything, when you're doing real estate. So time-wise, I didn't, I was just writing for myself. I didn't know what was out there. But, this year, just CNN wrote an article about is God a white man or something that was during Easter. And a lot of articles and other people are writing about is God a black is God a man? So I'm seeing titles like that. And this one, I wrote it under the title of whiteness. I never wanted a long title. So invisible, as you mentioned, is short. It's one word. Surviving God is only 2 words. So I only wanted to go one word book titles from now on. It's easier for me to talk about and remember. And then the publisher came back with this long title and I said, no. I said, it's way too long. I'm not going to remember it because I have my own podcast and I have a hard time remembering everybody else's book titles. So if it's short, I can remember, but my recent guess some of them are so long, I can't remember. Even now, after I've like tweeted about it so many times, I have to still Google it to find out what the title is. I didn't want to do that. So I said, oh, it's too long. But then they said no. And then I said, well, get rid of the word when. And then they said no. So
Hmm.
I thought about it and I'm so happy with this title. I like the whiteness would have never worked. And the publisher said, a lot of people are writing on whiteness. It's not just the church. It's, sociologists, historians, other people are writing on it. So now it all makes sense. And I'm so happy with this title. It's long, but it's okay. At least I can remember it.
Well, it's clear, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's got a lot of clarity, which I always like in
Yeah.
titles.
So I'm really happy with it.
So who would you say the book's most intended for?
I'm hoping everybody and anybody will read it. Those who are in the church, those who left the church, and those just curious who are not even religious people. Because I think how we view God, whether you're a Christian or of other faith or no faith, really determines how we live, how we act, how we view the world, how we come up with laws in our society. So it's really, really important. So whether you believe or not, it really affects us. So that's why I'm hoping for a wide audience that those who are struggling with the Christian faith will also come to read it, and people of color, white people, immigrants, and I want it to be translated. None of my books have been translated into another language. You would think that Koreans would have translated it, but
Yeah,
no, I know none of them. So I'm hoping somebody will translate this into different languages. On social media, they're asking, is it in Spanish? And I said no. So I'm hoping that it'll be translated into different languages.
especially Invisible as an
Yeah,
example.
I know.
How can that not be in Korean?
Well, I know why, but there's a lot of patriarchy and
Uh,
whiteness coming into play. So
wow.
yeah.
Wow. Well, hopefully someday that'll be overcome. But
Yeah. And then one person would just translate all of them.
yeah, maybe
Some
there you
Korean
go. That's a
woman or
great idea.
somebody. Yeah.
So I'd like to read a couple of excerpts from the book's description. The first one says, when Western Christians think about God, the default image that comes to mind is usually white and male. Absolutely. Um, why, I mean, your book is all about how that happened. And I don't want you to try to obviously spill the beans on the whole book, but can you kind of summarize that?
Yeah. So I want people to read it, but just to say briefly, Um, Christianity, with Jesus born in Palestine and then under the Roman Empire, so religion starts spreading, within the empire, the Roman Empire, and going into Europe. The European church fathers, the white leaders of the church, the theologians, the doctors of the church, just kept on portraying God as a white man. And it's been with us for the last 2000 years. I grew up with it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I
every
grew up with it. I'm sure you grew up with it and so
sure.
many people. So, when we think about recent theology, recent church history, where, the church is going to the global south, the European churches are dying off. The theologians are now coming from diverse locations around the globe. So in the last 50 years, lots of have changed in the church scene and in the theological world. We're hearing diverse voices,
Hmm.
which should have been there for the last 2000 years, but it's been all white men's voices. The women's voices weren't present, and they were considered witches. So you burned them at the stake if they started to speak up in the church or say something different than what the white men have been saying. So, all these problems. So now that people like me and James Cone and Miguel de la Torre, feminist voices. You got so many other diverse voices, and we are sharing different ways of talking about God and reimagining God. So I'm hoping that the rest of the world will listen to us.
Well, even just in the short time that I've been involved in the Christian publishing arena, I've seen a difference. I've seen more openness to that than what I did originally. So it's good to see. There's still a
Good.
long ways to
I'm
go,
happy to see
but
too.
you know. So also from the book description, it says the myth of the white male god has had a devastating effect as it enabled Christianity to have a profoundly colonialist posture across the globe. So in the book, do you describe some of these effects?
Yeah, you know, um, this understanding of a white male God, so this missiology of whiteness gets carried as missionaries went to different parts of the world. So you got Christianity kind of growing and merging and solidifying in Europe, but what we've been taught is it's like this pristine Christianity. This is the true Christianity, as if it never syncretized, as if it never changed from 2000 years ago. That's the lie that's been taught to me and to people in the church. And we forget, when we celebrate Easter, it's from a pagan practice. The dating of it and what we do, and even the naming of Easter, that's not in the Bible. It never was. It's not biblical scripture.
Yeah.
It's a pagan practice. So we should name it as pagan practice that we are practicing within the church. But the white male Christian theologians and leaders and priests and popes and reformers present it as if it is the truth for all time. So understanding syncretism has always been part of Christianity, and not, when people like me, people of color, talk about sync or feels like it looks like it's syncretism, we should not be labeled as doing something strange or evil. It is what the church has been doing and will continue to do. Look at what we did with Christmas. All these green, evergreen.
Yeah.
There
Another
was no
pagan
green
thing.
things like that in Bethlehem. I've been to Bethlehem. You don't have evergreens, but that's like part of every church during Christmas will have these evergreens. Even in parts around in Korea and India where it's not even a thing to do, but we make it as if that is the true Christian practice of Christmas and Easter and all these practices within the church. We have to start naming them and making our pew members know what we're doing, because I am certain that majority of the people sitting in the pews think this is all Christian practice. It's not. It's pagan practices that made it into the church, made it into the European churches, and the European churches kept preaching about a white male God. So it is time to kind of wake up and recognize that that was then taken to Africa, to South America, and to Korea, and to different parts of Asia. So we all have this white male God through the missiology of white missionaries that brought this white male God.
Mhm. Um, Next, I'd like to read from a couple of the endorsements for the book. This is from our friend Brian McLaren, who says, I read everything I can by Grace G. Sun Kim, but I especially needed this book. As a white man who inherited a white male God, I am grateful for this Korean-born theologian who gently, clearly, and firmly guides readers like me into a bigger, deeper, more awesome, and just understanding of the Holy One. So is that what you'd like readers to take away from the book?
Yeah, exactly. I was so grateful for Brian McLaren to agree to endorse, but to give that kind of endorsement, I just want to put it on my forehead. And
Yeah,
then
no,
everyone
really.
could just read the endorsement and then just go ahead and read the book. Because I'm so grateful for how he has kind of um, summarized what I was trying to do. And then him as a white male, kind of this progressive leader, within Christianity to make that big statement is so helpful. And I'm just honored and happy that he reads as much as he can about my books. Because you publish a book and you think, who's going to read it? And I want as many people to read it. It's hard for these like the highly researched research books, which I have in between all these other books. They're harder to read by just regular people in the pews or just regular people in society. But the last few, this one, Surviving God, Invisible, I'm hoping that more and more people will read. So I'm just glad that Brian McLaren is reading my books.
Well, he's so generous with,
Yeah,
his endorsements and his work and,
yeah,
trying to lift up marginalized voices. And
yeah.
I think that him saying what he did should have a really positive impact. I'm very hopeful for that anyway.
Yeah, and we're doing a joint book launch release in
Oh,
Pittsburgh. We're going
good.
to be at the Festival of Homiletics.
Oh,
And
good.
yeah, so my book comes out May 4th, May 7th. His comes out May 14th. And I spoke at the Southern Lights conference that he puts together with Dinah Butler Bass. And it was there that he announced that we share the same birthday. So I'm thrilled that I have the same birthday as
I
Brian,
didn't know that.
which is so close to our book release date. So
Ah,
very
okay.
excited about that. Yeah. Because I don't know anybody like around me that I know. Like I know there's actors. There's got to be other people same birthday as me, but I don't know anyone. No friends. Nobody has the same birthday as me. So it's pretty exciting that we share the same
Yeah,
birthday.
yeah. That's funny. So here's a blurb from our friend Caitlin Curtis.
Yeah.
When God Became White is an incredibly comprehensive, yet personal and intimate look at the history of whiteness in the church and an excellent example of the power that shows up when silenced voices are heard and held with care. This book is an absolute must-read for all who call themselves Christians today, as the story of Christianity is tied up with colonialism, racism, whiteness, and oppression. So do you think that all Christians are really ready to hear what you have to say?
Ready or not, here it comes. So they better read it. I don't think they're ready, but when I've been invited to Australia to speak on the book, and they just say, "Oh, your recent book," and then I have to always ask, "Is it Surviving God or When God Became White?" Because it's coming out so close together, and I'm always shocked when they said "When God Became White" because I'm like, okay, I hope they know what the book is about. But I've been invited already lots for the rest of the year on When God Became White. So I think people are ready. Caitlin Curtis was on my podcast twice, Madang, and I've used her book to write this one. And, I'm reflecting on her voice, which is so important. We need to read Native American writers. We need to read Latinx and African American and Asian American writers because our perspective is different, but it's a much needed perspective because you cannot have this narrow perspective of God that we've had for the last 2,000 years because God is big, God is mysterious, God is infinite. So we can't just keep talking in the English language or the French language or the German language and just have these white male European images and thoughts about God because that is a disservice to Christianity. It's a disservice to the people sitting on the pews because God is bigger than white male theologians and church leaders from Europe.
Well, I know personally speaking, I've learned so much over the last few years by reading so many books from people like you and Caitlin and many others. It's just expanded my knowledge and, a lot of insights from you also. It's been extremely important for me, I know. And I think it has been for others. And I think it hopefully will be for even more.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for people like you who are reading beyond the white male theologians. So I'm just grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, certainly it's been my honor to do all this learning and do all this, speaking with, kind of leading edge authors in progressive Christianity. So I'd like to shift gears just for a minute and talk about finding your next calling. You've been an academic for many years and an author for several years now, which also means that in a sense you're a solo entrepreneur. So what led you to start writing books?
I think as an academic, you're kind of required to write books, though there's many who don't. So, but I think like if you're in the research universities and seminaries, it's expected. But if you're kind of in the more church oriented, not so much. But, I never thought of myself as a speaker or a writer, especially when I reflect on my childhood and I had so much difficulty speaking the English language and
Mm,
writing in the language. It was really hard. I struggled with it. So when I graduated with my PhD, I said, if I write 3 books before I retire, because I felt like my professors that I learned from wrote 1 or 2 books. So I thought, okay, if I write 3, I'll be happy. So I never thought I'll write a ton of books. I just thought
mm,
I'll just do what I need to do minimum and just go on and carry on. But writing has become a very important tool for me to share, to get the new ideas out, get some of my anger out too. Because, if you read Invisible, there's a lot of instances in my life that kind of led me to write that one too.
mhm.
So that's how I ended up writing books, and I hope to write many more. I'm in the process of writing a few right now as I speak, which may not come out for another year or 2 or 3. But anyway,
Are there any of those you can talk about yet or
ongoing
not?
process. No.
Too early? Okay, well, we'll come back.
Well, actually, I can do one.
Okay.
So Susan and I just finished our second book, Surviving God. Our first one was intersectional. So we signed and we're going to do feminist theology, the
Mm.
basics, I think with Rutledge. We signed it long ago, so I can't remember, but I think it was Rutledge publisher. So that one I can talk about. But the other ones, I always feel like I'm going to jinx it if I talk about it too early.
Oh, I understand, and that's perfectly fine. But that'll give us a chance to get back together when those come out. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
we can learn about
Invite me back anytime.
them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about discernment for a little bit. Are there any like processes or people or reference materials that you found helpful when you need to make important decisions?
Um, well, I have a few friends that I consult. I don't know if there's ref for important decisions, but I do a lot of thinking too. So I think that's what's preventing me from sleeping well at night. It's like I can't shut this brain down. So I'm like ongoing. So I'm a very poor speaker. I've always been not, well, speaker too, but sleeper all throughout my life. So I think I'm always kind of thinking through if something is wrong, etc. So myself and there's a few mentors that I consult.
What advice do you have now that you've been doing this for a few years to those who are just getting started?
Started writing or
Yeah, writing,
um
speaking, being out there in public.
yeah, that it's not an easy thing. Once a book is done, it looks so easy. I have some friends who think it's just you just sit in a typewriter or laptop and you just sit there and it'll come out. You can sit there for months, nothing can come out. So that's the reality. So it's not easy. And when I think about Anne Lamott and all these other big name kind of just authors out there, that's their full-time job. I know it's not easy. They do share about it. So it's not an easy thing, but just keep at it. I think if you are determined to write, and you just keep at it in the midst of loneliness because you're writing by yourself and hardship and just wanting to give up, just keep going.
Mm.
I've wanted to give up so many times. You just keep going.
So, Grace, again, I really appreciate you taking some time to be with us. I know you're really busy with all of the book releases and speaking that you're doing. Again, the title of Grace's new book, May 7th, is when it releases. When God Became White, Dismantling Whiteness for a More Just Christianity. And please go to Grace's website, gracegsunkim at .wordpress.com. You can learn more about her podcast, her speaking engagements, and all of her previous books. So Grace, thanks again so
Also,
much and
yeah,
congratulations.
I just wanted to say people can follow me on my Substack. I started a Substack so people can follow me there. It's called Loving Life. So, yeah, and my
Excellent.
website. So thank you so much for mentioning it.
Good, good. Thanks again and congratulations and good luck on the book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.